Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and 𝘵𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I got my co-host 𝘵𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀 here. What's up, man? How you doing today?
Doing good, man. Everything's awesome on my end. But with that said, man, let's get right into it. We've got a very special guest on the show today. And 𝘗𝘰𝗻𝗄𝗏 describes his new book as balm for the soul of anyone searching for truth and answers to life's difficult questions. We can all learn to be more soulful and balanced to achieve success in business and in our personal lives. So stick around to learn more. But before I introduce our special guest today, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast and to our mailing list through our website so you don't miss out on all the free resources we have to help you start and grow your business. With that said, I'd like to welcome our guest today, 𝘗𝘗𝗍𝗲𝗏𝘏, to the show. How are you doing, man?
Hey, Clint. Hey, Andrew. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Honored to be on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, really cool to have you on here. Thank you.
Yeah, man. And Christian, with that said, and with that introduction, I mean, you know, I was just talking to you offline about watching your Jack Canfield video, which was very inspiring, hearing words come out of from someone that I've actually, you know, read books from, and bringing that full circle though, and being where you are today. Can you take us back to when your actual entrepreneurial journey started and what it is about entrepreneurship that really gets you fired up and pushes you forward?
Well, you know, that's a great question. And yeah, both of those, you know, like the 𝘗𝘗𝗍𝗏𝗏 endorsement and Jack Canfield's interview, like are a testament to that, right? I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years and there have been a lot of peaks and a lot of valleys in that journey. Yeah. But one thing, if I can say one thing to your audience of entrepreneurs, is to stick with your dream. Like persistence, more than anything else, is what counts for this. That's, you know, I courted 𝘗𝘗𝗍𝗏𝗏 for 3 years in order to be able to get that endorsement from her.
Oh, wow.
Which is a whole story in and of itself. But yeah, what drives me, to answer your question, is a sense of mission. Like, you know, when I think about the state of the world and the state that we find ourselves in, sometimes I just like say, you know, like, my God, what can I do about the environmental crisis or the polarization in the world, or, you know, whatever, immigration, all the challenges that we're facing, social justice, so many challenges. And so sometimes I think, you know what, I'm just going to go to the beach, eat a lot of dark chocolate, have a lot of sex. And then I reel myself back and I say, right, dude, chill, right? What can I do? Right. And always I land on the same thing, continue to wake myself up and continue to impact as many people as I can to do the same. And hopefully there's something about that 100th monkey effect, that at some point, you know, enough of us get it and wake up so that it ripples out. You know, the phrase that inspires me is paraphrasing Einstein, who said that you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness in which it was created. So when I think about all these problems that we're facing, you know, we're kind of in a make it or break it point. The planet will be fine. You know, it might take a few million years. Life will continue in some form. Consciousness will continue in some form. Maybe it turns out to be an enlightened cockroach planet. Who knows, right? Whether we make it, right? We're just now beginning to witness what we have unleashed on the environment, of which COVID is a symptom, right? COVID is a symptom of our relationship to nature. And so when I think about all that, it's like, you know, it's like, what can I do to support that? The only way out of this hole that we have dug ourselves into collectively is, from my perspective, a leap in consciousness, a spiritual revolution, something that's going to shift the way that we think about ourselves, about each other, and our connection to this tiny pebble, hurtling through space at thousands of miles per hour, on whose survival we depend.
Yeah. So, you know, it sounds like from what you're saying there that really, you know, if we don't really understand ourselves and we're not connected with ourselves, and kind of goes to what, you know, what you're into and what you do and what you help people with, we're not going to be able to solve problems in general, right? Like if we don't understand, if we're not really kind of connecting with ourselves, connecting with, like you said, the environment and the world that we live in, it's going to be a big challenge. So is that kind of what you mean by taking that next leap in consciousness?
Yeah. And so I spend the first part of this book, and maybe a third, maybe a quarter of the book, talking about the human mind, the ego mind, what makes us do the things we do, right? So this book is the first of a series of 3 about what it means to live a heroic life. It's called Calling All Heroes. And so what it means to live heroically in the 21st century, when we don't have a horse hitched outside, most of us don't anyway, and the armors and the demons to slay except the ones in our own heads. So how do we do that? And then the first one's about how do we step into personal power in a way that's not about hierarchy, control, fear, force, domination, that doesn't require that we push anybody down, step on them in order for us to feel powerful. How do we do that in a different way? And so the first part of the book, as I started to talk about, is understanding what makes us do the things that we do. And we have such a limited perception of who we are. And, we don't have the time to really get into what the ego mind is here in this interview, but a great metaphor that helps us get it quickly is put a baseball in the center of a stadium. That's what the ego is. Who we are is actually the stadium. And we've allowed this tiny, tiny, tiny part of who we are to think that it is all who we are and to make choices from its very limited and always fear-based perspective.
Yeah, that's interesting. It is. Yeah, definitely. So how important do you think is meditation? This probably ties into what you were just saying, but how important do you think meditation and controlled breathing, because you do a lot with that, how can we use that to unlock more productivity in our lives, and both for business and also for personal?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so much research that has been done on meditation, and the benefits of it are established, like well established, not only in terms of health, in terms of inner peace, but also in terms of productivity, workplace relationships. So that's pretty established. Even, and there's again so much to say about meditation, but even if we took on the simple practice of sitting by ourselves for 10 minutes, 3 times a week, and most of the time it's going to be boring, right? We're sitting there watching our breath, or counting our breath, or repeating a mantra, or whatever type of meditation we're guided to do, or we choose to do. Most of the time we're going to be there, and suddenly, there I go doing my to-do list, back to the breath. So, there I go doing my shopping list, back to the breath. Oh, there I go, rehashing the argument I had with a coworker at the office yesterday, back to the breath. Mm-hmm. Most of the time it's that. Once in a while we have this moment of no mind and bliss and inner peace and sense of connectedness. But the benefit of being willing to do just the practice, that's what it is. That's why it's called a practice. Because doing that practice, being willing to sit there and just watch ourselves, watch what's going on with us, look at what's going on in our minds, what's going on in our emotions, our physical sensations. That's sort of like running the miles so that in preparation for the marathon, or learning how to dribble before you can learn how to play basketball, because it's that practice of watching ourselves that changes the game, so that we're about to get caught in an argument or get caught in a power struggle with a vendor, a colleague, a new client, whatever it is, right? Having that practice under our belt is what gives us just that moment that we need. It's like, oh, there I go. And to nip ourselves to catch ourselves before we go over the waterfall and say or do something that we're going to react and then regret. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's a benefit of meditation in the sense that we're talking about now.
Definitely. Yeah, I can definitely see. I've never actually done I haven't actively done any meditating that I've really been aware of, but maybe I have, just in pausing, reflecting, taking some time to kind of zone out and just think, or just sort of try and shut shut things down and shut all the craziness out for a little bit. So maybe I actually have meditated more than I think. But
well, I think you do. I think you've gotten to those places when you do your snowboarding. And I mean, I read a little bit about you guys too, and I know that that's part of your business. Is, you know, when you're skiing, when you're on that mountain, it's like you've got to be present, right? You got to be fully present.
You're
you
in that
be
moment
in your mind, because that's when you're gonna wipe out. So that's a meditative state.
That's so true. Yeah,
you're fully present.
Yep.
And that's when we get into that zone state, which many of us, you know, it even happens in the shower, it happens when we're in a long drive, it happens when we're exercising, that we just get out of that crazy monkey mind that the Buddhists talk about. Because usually, and that's what goes on inside our heads, we jump from thought to thought in the same way that a monkey goes from branch to branch. And that's what's exhausting to us.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And that's probably why we like, you know, I love snowboarding and surfing and all these activities that really kind of forces you to be in the moment and to just be present and happy and connected. And that's it. You know, I mean, I think that's probably has a huge, you know, there's a huge part of that. Like you're right. If you're snowboarding, especially, and you're going really fast and, you know, you're going, let's say you're, you know, you've got some obstacles in the way, whether there's other skiers, snowboarders, trees, whatever, you know, you really have to be present. And you really, even if you are worried about something or your brain's trying to, you know, hold something in there and reason with it, you have to shut it out. Otherwise you're going to be in trouble.
Exactly.
And that's awesome.
Exactly.
I really think that, like what you are saying, I mean, I could resonate with it pretty well, right? Because I really think it's all about that sense of balance, right? Learning how to pull back in when everything feels like it's going, you know, these separate ways. But it's really when you're distracted or your mind's hopping from idea to idea, it's really finding out what really balances you out as that individual, right? Where you can actually center yourself. And then actually enjoy the things, whether, you know, I'm not saying, you know, a lot of people enjoy bad things, but you can start really appreciating just how things play out in your life, right? If you're in a good place, or if you're a positive thinker, most of the time, positive things are going to happen to you, right? And then in the same sense, if you're just that negative person, the negative Nancy, or somebody that's just continuously just negative about things, I mean, you're putting yourself and setting yourself up for negative things to happen, right? Like it's all about the law of attraction and just where you're at and your peace in mind and figuring out again, what is that thing that you can do that balances you, whether it's the meditation, whether you're like, what is it? Like going to sit out by the pool and just relaxing, you know, and just looking and just appreciating everything around you, seeing a bird fly by, you know, the wind below and see the leaves on the trees. I mean, just being able to appreciate simple things that we take for granted on just a normal everyday basis, I really think could really center you. And it is a sense of meditation where you like, okay, now I got all my thoughts collected. I feel better about everything because I'm appreciating it. I'm in the actual moment. I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, or just individuals, life happens. We got the hustle and flow, we're grinding things out, and then we don't sit there and appreciate exactly the process or the journey that we're actually on all the time.
Yeah. I love that. That's so beautifully framed, Clint. And yeah, it's like it's so important things you said, realizing the brain's like a computer. What you put in is what's going to come out. So to be mindful about what we put into it is critical for any human, and in particular entrepreneurs.
Exactly. Yep.
And then what you said about becoming present, like it's like the only thing we know is real, right? That is not. Our mind is usually stuck in the past, rehashing a past, ruminating about a past that is gone, doesn't even exist anymore, or fantasizing about, hallucinating about, projecting into a future that may or may not come to be. So the only thing we know is real, that is not a figment of our minds, a memory or a projection or a fantasy, is the present moment. And that's what our mind has such a hard time being in. So any practice that we do to keep us present and to keep us in the moment is great. And I would think you, with Clint, with your military discipline and training that you have an advantage on most of us in terms of training the mind to be present.
No, 100%.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So Christian, can you tell us a little about your new book? I mean, and what you mean when you say, or by the meaning, living heroically and setting yourself free?
Yeah. That's one of the ways in which COVID has served us, without minimizing the tragedy of it and all the death and all the loss of jobs, et cetera, right? All the other tragic parts of it. It has also brought some things to light. And one of the things from my perspective that is, and it's helped us expand the way about how we think about heroism. Like most of us, think of heroes as somebody, like a warrior or a first responder or a superhero with a cape, somebody who puts their life at stake for the sake of somebody else or for the sake of a greater cause. Now, COVID has expanded the way that we think about it. So we include all the healthcare practitioners, the doctors, the nurses, the respiratory therapists who literally put their lives at stake to keep us alive, the rest of us alive. And we even included the grocery store clerks, the delivery people who did the same and made some serious sacrifices in their lives to keep us fed and with the stuff that we need to keep life going. But what about the rest of us, right? And the way that I write about in this book, like it's nothing short of heroic. So it's a way of living that is mindful, like we're talking about, so that rather than be coasting through life at the effect of our pasts and the conditioning that we took on from family and culture and religion, et cetera, to be willing to go inside and to ask the hard questions. What makes us do the things we do? What are the patterns in our life, right? Why do we sometimes get caught in relationship patterns that feel like we're in the same boring movie that we've seen 100 times, just with a different actor? Right. So what is that, right? Why do we attract subconsciously this certain type of people, certain type of relationships over and over again? And so it's hard work, right? It's a lot easier to go through life and numbing out and numbing out in all the ways that we do, whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex or gaming or shopping or being workaholics, all the ways that we run away from our feelings, from thinking about ourselves, which is not an effective strategy because all that stuff doesn't go away, right? It's still under there, underneath the surface, impacting the quality of our lives and the success of our businesses and our relationships. So that's one way in which living heroically means to me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that, how it's we all have the opportunity to live heroically and find out what that means to us. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And so much to say about that, like react, like overwriting, like we were talking about earlier, instead of just reacting and then regretting, like having the presence to pause and be willing to, like, wow, ouch, that hurt. And then choosing, like introducing choice. That's nothing short of heroic. Reacting, anybody can do. Yeah. Like feeling victimized by life. Like, poor me, woe is me. If it only wasn't because of what mom did or dad didn't do, or the teacher or the minister or society or sexism or racism or homophobia. If it, or the family that I was born into, if I had only been born into a wealthy family, and not to deny any of that, right? Those are factors, and I'm not minimizing anybody's trauma or denying or saying that that we should hang out with any of the people that did anything in our lives. But what I'm saying is, if like to feel victimized by life, anybody can do. To say, you know what, that sucked, and I wish it hadn't been, and how am I going to show up in life in response to that? Stuff of heroes.
Yeah. I think that's the key, is figuring out how to overcome. And because there's always going to be obstacles. There's always going to be things that, that we all could sit back and say, woe is me. And just kind of wallow in that and get upset about why something is the way that it is. And we all do that to some degree. There's always a lot of times there's a reaction like, what the heck, why did that have to go this way? But then, it just makes such a huge difference to figure out how to quickly overcome that, and then move on. I think I have a background in engineering, and I think that has given me, if nothing else, that's allowed me to look at every problem and realize that most problems, there's not a solution for every single problem. There's some things that, man, there's just not a solution for, but most things, most problems do have a solution. I love looking at problems that way. Like, hey, okay, this sucks. This is a problem, but what's the solution? Like, it's almost exciting in a way, almost a challenge to get into and figure out what that solution is. Yeah. And that's every single day, every single hour for an entrepreneur, especially, everybody deals with it no matter what you do, what profession you're in, and obviously in everybody's personal life, but especially as an entrepreneur, it's like, it's putting out fires, all damn day. So gotta figure out how to get through all that stuff.
I love that you bring the perspective of an engineer to this. I love that. And yeah, there are things that maybe we're not going to be able to do anything about, but what we always can do something about is what Clint was talking about, which is the mindset aspect, right? How are we going to frame it? Right. How are we going to respond to it? Are we going to allow it to take our power away and to keep us in this poor me relationship to life? Or are we going to say, what we're talking about is like, what? It sucked. I didn't want it to be this way. And what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right. Because even shifting that way of thinking pops us out of victim mode and steps us into our power.
I love that. Yeah. It's just a simple paradigm shift, right? And just a change of thinking in general, because I from having family members to friends, I served in the military, right? And I think in military members, when we come out, especially, the ones that like actually fought, right, and that were serving on the front lines, infantry, we have type A personalities, we're hard chargers, and then everything slows down. And then a lot of guys don't know how to react, right? They don't know how to like flip the switch and come back to reality as far as, okay, that was their reality for a year or however long they served, or for so many years, being deployed multiple times. But it's like, I kind of relate it to that. I can ask myself, because I got injured in Afghanistan, I can sit there and play the victim and why did that happen to me, and be mad at the world for getting injured or being put in that position in the first place, whether you agree with war or not. As long as there's going to be some type of war going on. But, and whether the government put us in harm's way, whatever, you can agree or disagree with however, but we were there. I was serving the country, because at the time, that's what I felt led to do. But it's just a simple paradigm shift in your mind. And just like, look, what happened in the past, I cannot change that. I can just go ahead. There's things that I have no power of whether it happens or not, to a certain degree, right? Like, I can set myself up for success and arm myself and become ready to react to anything that happens. But it's all about how you react to that situation, because one thing we can control, like, we can't just control everything, just normal everyday occurrences that happen, but we can set ourselves up and be in a better position, and also set up how we react to that situation. And if you're in a positive mindset and you're sitting there meditating, your triggers or whatever, like, there's a lot of things I had to work through coming back from Afghanistan and being injured, and certain triggers, fireworks, and a lot of things that, just throws you back into, or throws me back into war mode. I know those triggers now, right? And I know certain things that I want to stay away from, and I don't put myself in certain situations when I don't have to, that lead me to be uncomfortable. But it's just really doing that soul searching and knowing who you are, and just accepting things that have happened to you, and just seeing how you can improve the quality of life moving forward. Because again, whether you've been victimized, whether you've been A, B, or C, it doesn't matter. It's just getting out of that victim mentality, right? Is because if it happens, look, just what can you do to better your situation, or what can you do to continue to move forward so you don't play that same game of the Groundhog's Day, right? You wake up every day and it's just like the same patterns, the same things, addiction, whatever it is. You got to break that cycle at some point, but it takes that soul searching, that paradigm shift in your brain, and acceptance at the same time to move forward.
And it's nothing short of heroic. It takes work.
Exactly.
To be willing to go inside and to feel that stuff. Sometimes feelings that we spent a lifetime running away from, or having memories, and by the way, thank you for your service, and I'm sorry about your injury. And the person who inspires me the most about this conversation that we're talking about, the popping out of victim mode, is Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist. Spent years in concentration camps, lost everything. Everything was taken away from him. Property, everyone in his family was taken away, including his pregnant wife, soulmate kind of relationship. And that man was able to say, that, and it's not to minimize anybody's trauma. Like we all have traumatic experiences, but he was able to say in this most inhuman of settings that they could take everything away from him except for one thing. And that was the ability to choose how he would be in response to that. So if he can do that there, certainly we can do it in our lives. And I know we've all gone through traumatic stuff. So it's not minimizing any of that. But it's that mindset, that reframe, which from my perspective that you're talking about, it's nothing less than a leap in consciousness. It's like popping ourselves out of this victim hole that we most of us have gotten stuck in.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, that's cool. So there's that leap in consciousness. I like that. And that, I think that probably, like going all the way back to the beginning, what you were talking about solving problems, that's how you solve it, right? With being able to adjust how you react to things.
Exactly.
That's cool. So Christian, throughout your entrepreneurial journey, what has been the most difficult thing, do you think, about being an entrepreneur for you?
That's a really good question. I don't know if this is the most difficult thing. I mean, there's so many ups and downs on learning how to do stuff that I didn't know how to do, like then especially shifting to a virtual world last year. I've been doing retreats, live retreats for 30 years, and then suddenly boom, like full stop.
It's over. Yeah.
And then shift to a virtual reality. That was definitely challenging. I think here's one big leap that happened a few years ago. I've always had a sense of mission, and I've always held my work as a mission. And I'm almost embarrassed, not quite, but almost embarrassed to say that it's only been 4 years since I had a business account. I ran it all through my personal account. Yeah. I didn't know about business. And then about 4 years ago, I had this realization that, you know what? It is a mission and will always be a mission. And it's also a business.
Yeah.
And in not holding it as a business, I realized that I was actually doing it a disservice. So that was a huge leap. And I mean, I wish it would have happened sooner, but it is what it is, right? It took me that long to get that understanding, but that began a total different phase where I hired an assistant part-time. I got the business account, set up 2 corporations, have CPAs and attorneys and all that stuff. And I see the effects of it. I see even where I'd been running as a solopreneur most of my life, and it worked. I was doing well. This shift, which was hard because it was suddenly I had to take it into account another person. Yeah, right. It's not just
a little more
me.
Responsibility, more accountability, which can be scary, and maybe there's some reluctance there, right? Especially when you can run it very, close to the vest and very much like a solopreneur. You don't have to set too many things up and be Yeah. But then
that was an interesting adjustment.
Yeah. But then once you got it set up, I'm sure, and you started getting, going through that process, or, you got through that process and you have people helping you, I'm sure you've realized some growth and some real benefit to that, to really shining a light on it, making it a priority.
For sure. After that initial adjustment period, and then hiring somebody, I had probably up until COVID, I had probably tripled my income. Definitely doubled and close to tripled.
Nice.
my revenue.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's just adjusting, because you got to learn the power of delegation, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's like prioritization and delegation. It's like, hey, so I need this to be done, right? In this order. But at the same time, I also need to know who I can trust, and if this person could do this. Because again, when you're able to pass things off that might have been slowing you down, even though you probably had a good process initially, right? By yourself, you were getting by, you were doing good. But when you're able to like pass some of those things off, that just frees you up to focus on some of the things that, you know, that you're just more powerful in and better at, that you're like, now probably one of the things I didn't like doing initially, now I can pass that off to somebody that
Right.
does this for a living, that doesn't, you know, even mind doing this portion of it, like a CPA or with numbers and stuff, man. I still hate that to today. And my wife is a CPA, and I just like, she puts a lot of pressure on me because I went and I got an accounting degree, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. That's why I don't do this for a living. This is why you chose to do this. And I am over here being that entrepreneur and doing my thing because I hate numbers though, man. But at the end of the day, it's important to know how to balance all that stuff out too.
Yeah. And it's so true. And making that shift from doing it all, even though I wasn't the most qualified person to do some of it, like, you know, like managing the database, the client database, which I was probably using 10%, like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a transition to, you know, to get my assistant to learn how to do it. But now, I mean, she does, like, I hardly go in there anymore. And it took me a while to trust her with my database of, you know, 25 years that I'd been developing this database, but it was worthwhile.
That's great.
That's worthwhile.
So Christian, as we wrap up this episode, brother, if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, if I can have two.
Yeah. As many as you want, really.
Well, two things, you know, go within, right? There are a few things that I'm dogmatic about, but that's one of them. Because if we want to have the business that we want, the success that we want, the life that we want, the relationships that we dream of, there's no way around that. We've got to know ourselves and why we do the things we do, how we sabotage ourselves, so that we can cut that out, right? But if we can't cut it out unless we know what we're doing. So, and the only way we're going to figure that out is by going within and asking ourselves those questions. And it's heroic. You know, it takes work to figure that out. But it is so worthwhile. It is so rewarding. The rewards are infinite. And then the other thing is, like, there is a way that we can step into our power that is congruent with who we are, because most of us have an ambivalent relationship to power. We want it, but we're afraid of it. And I think at core, what we're afraid of is that we might abuse it and cause harm to others. And combined by the fact that we've been conditioned to think that power is a bad thing. You know, quotes like power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So what good-hearted person wants to be corrupted or wants to be abusive, right? So add to that mix the fact that we've been conditioned to think that the emotions are weakness. Somebody made that up along the way. The emotions are not weak. They're not strength. They're just energies like everything else. And especially as guys, right? Since we were kids, little boys don't cry.
Yeah.
And there's a price to pay for that. No wonder the rate of suicide is 4 times as high among men, and longevity, women outlive us by 5 years. And part of the reason for that is we walk around like robots, unfeeling, and that stuff, there's a price to pay for that.
Yeah.
And so put all that into the mix, and what happens is that we end up giving our power away, our inherent power that nobody can give to us. Nobody can take it away. We are the only ones who can give it away. And the sad part, the lame part about it, is that we give it away for an illusion of security, for a false sense of acceptance, and for crumbs, for morsels of pseudo love, because it's not even authentic love. Because if we're presenting ourselves as something less than we are, something that is not authentically ourselves, how can we expect to be seen as who we really are? So any kind of validation or pseudo validation that we get is not even real. It's false. So there's a way that we can do that in a way that works for us.
100%.
That's amazing. Yep. Love that.
Well, guys, I think that's a wrap for this episode. And you heard it here. Live heroically and set yourself free. From the both of us, Christian, we want to thank you for taking the time of your day and joining us and adding value to what we're doing on our podcast, man.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for having me on the show. And thanks so much for what you do that I know makes a difference in many lives.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate it. And thank you for being on the show, Christian. It's been a blast. Thank you all so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Christian is working on, check out soulfulpower.com. And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe to our podcast. And don't forget to download our free ebook about the success mindset at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs, and don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.